Hey, what's going on? Jeff Ratcliffe here. You know, a wise man once said, tight end is brutal in fantasy football, and that was certainly true last year. Consistency on a week-to-week basis was hard to come by. So if you had Travis Kelce, if you had Zach Ertz, if you had George Kittle, you were sitting pretty for much of the season. The position is terrible for fantasy purposes. There's no doubt about it. So it begs to ask the question, should you spend a premium pick this year on one of those three tight ends? And I'm telling you, it is going to be a premium pick. You may see Travis Kelce go in the first round of a 12-team draft this year. You'll certainly see him go in the second. You're very likely going to see Kittle and Ertz go shortly thereafter, very likely by the end of the second round. So the first 24 picks, 3 of them could be tight ends this year. So should you use one of those picks? And I think one of the things that we overlook the most when it comes to making our early round draft picks is how this ultimately impacts our roster construction. The folks in the biz, the pros, they know this, but a lot of casual drafters just focus on making that pick and moving on without realizing that ripple effect that plays out. So I think we should take a look at what might happen if you use one of those early picks on, say, Travis Kelce. So let's say you're pick 112. You're at the very end of the first round. So you're on that turn. You have the first pick in the second round. 9 running backs are already off the board. And that could very well happen in this year's draft. Running backs are going to go early and often. You know it. I know it. Heck, my grandmom knows it. Everybody knows it. So 9 are off the board. 2 wide receivers also off the board. Let's say it's DeAndre Hopkins and Devontae Adams. So the best left on the board for you right now at running back, I think 2 running backs would stand out. Very likely going to see Dalvin Cook there. Probably going to see Todd Gurley there as well. At wide receiver, your next best options, Michael Thomas, Julio Jones, Odell Beckham Jr. And of course, Travis Kelce is there. So let's say you don't want to go with those running backs. Gurley has his baggage. We know it. Dalvin Cook, I mean, he has some injury baggage as well. He's far from a sure thing. I like him to break out, but maybe not as a first-round pick, right? So, all right, we pass on the running backs. Now we're looking at the wide receivers. Michael Thomas had 125 catches last year. Not too shabby, so he stands out. I think we'll take him over Odell Beckham Jr. I like him in Cleveland, no doubt about it, but Michael Thomas, that high floor. And then Julio Jones, you know, again, it's almost a toss-up, but let's lean Michael Thomas there. Now at that second pick, the first pick in the second round, let's go with Travis Kelce. Let's roll the dice and see what happens with a roster construction with these 2 guys at the first round and second round turn. When it comes back to us, and by the way, is that wait not the worst thing in all of fantasy football? When you're on the ends of a round and you have to wait for all those picks to come back, you're going to see running backs flying off the board. The position is going to dry up, so you have no shot at a top 12 ranked running back when your pick comes around next. Who's going to be left? Well, you're probably going to be looking at guys like Aaron Jones, Marlon Mack, Kerryon Johnson, which there's nothing wrong with these players. Don't get me wrong. I'm not poo-pooing the idea of drafting them. What I'm saying, though, is these are upside breakout candidates who we're now going to be drafting as our top running back. From a roster construction standpoint, that is problematic. You know, we're putting ourselves behind the 8 ball here when we consider that most of the other teams are going to have at least 1, if not 2 of those top 12 fantasy running backs this year. So even if you draft 2 of those guys, you're going into the season a little shaky at running back. And again, if you're a seasoned vet, maybe you can make up ground here, but for a lot of casual players, this is a bit of a predicament. So let's flip the script a little bit here. Let's go back to the beginning. And instead of taking Michael Thomas, Travis Kelce, let's just roll the dice on those running backs. And I know, is that the sexiest combo there of Dalvin Cook and Todd Gurley? No, but there's certainly upside with Dalvin Cook. I think he's a candidate to possibly break into the elite tier if everything shakes out the right way and he stays healthy. And Todd Gurley, yes, risk, sure, maybe the biggest risk of any of the top 12 running backs, but also potentially the biggest reward when you consider the cost. So let's go with those 2 guys. When we come back around in the third round, Here are wide receivers who will be available to us very likely. A.J. Green, Stephon Diggs, Brandon Cooks, Robert Woods. So you get one of those two Rams receivers maybe. Robert Woods was a top 10 fantasy receiver in PPR last year, so I don't mind him at all. A.J. Green, yeah, he's over the hill, but he's also been a steady wide receiver one when he's on the field. The offense should be more exciting. Stephon Diggs coming off a 100-catch season in that exciting offense. I mean, these are really interesting options there, and I like that roster construction route a lot more than if we went that zero RB type approach where we're taking a wide receiver and a tight end in the first 2 rounds. So thinking about that, ultimately then, what do we do with tight end? And I don't think the answer is the big 3. I don't think you need Travis Kelce, Zach Ertz, or George Kittle to win your league this year. I think that next 5 group is really where we want to target in most of our home league drafts this year. And that next group, in some way, shape, or form, depending on your order, O.J. Howard, Hunter Henry, Evan Ingram, Eric Ebron, and Jared Cook. Those guys are probably going to be on the board between rounds 5 and 8. Maybe 1 or 2 of them jump up, that's fine. But really, if we're looking between rounds 5 and 8, we now have very likely 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and then we can hit that tight end and get decent value. From a roster construction standpoint, that is much better than taking a tight end in the 2nd round. The draft capital in the 2nd round, I don't know if I want to spend it. So I am not drafting one of the big 3 this year. Of course, you can do you, but I'm going to do me. And if you want to see where these guys all land in our rankings over at Pro Football Focus, you can check those out. The website, of course, profootballfocus.com. We have all kinds of goodies for fantasy football purposes, so go check that out, profootballfocus.com.